Hey everyone, so my name is JB. I run Empower with Pat, and I'm going to be hosting today's AMA session. Please feel free for any kind of questions. Welcome, Jason. Jason, thank you so much for taking out the time. I would give the floor to you, and why don't you just introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi everyone. So my name is Jason. I am now working at Fraser Health Authority, based as Surrey Central as the business analyst. With COVID, things change a lot because I'm working in healthcare. But I before COVID, let's start from there. Before COVID, I have been Scrum Master for my team and also building dashboards. So I'm doing a bit of Scrum, product management, data visualization. That was pre-COVID. And once COVID started, I actually got redeployed to do supply chain work because of my background. So I was tasked to help distribute PPE all across Fraser Health region from Burnaby to Hope. Because at that time, I guess, critical time has, critical needs. And so the health authority decided to start an urgent supply chain center. And unfortunately, there's not that many people at Fraser Health has that experience in supply chain. So they just pull me in to do that. And so that's what I have been doing since April, actually. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now. And before joining Fraser Health, I work in a company called Premium Brands. If you guys like food, particularly Starbucks, actually one of our subsidiaries supply all the Starbucks sandwiches all across North America. So I've been getting experience in food manufacturing, doing a bit of procurement and logistics. So that's where I came from. Even a couple of years earlier, back in 2016, that's the time that I graduated. I graduated from Sauder at UBC in accounting and supply chain. So it's actually nothing to do with what I'm doing right now because I'm doing a bit of data analytics and supply chain. So nothing to do with accounting at all back in the day. So I think that, been through a bit of career change 2-3 times and yeah, still learning.
Cool. Yeah.
Intro.
I mean, it's interesting to see another Sauder alumni. I'm also from Sauder, Jason. So,
Right.
yeah, when you say that, you've kind of moved around, and I think one very important thing, like as people who've come here and who are trying to figure out, is that how do you take that transferable skill, and what are the things that are actually like, when you go out and say, hey, this is what I really want to do, or if I want to do supply chain, how do I, take my passion and then show it to employers, if I may? Like, what's that kind of conversation and what drives you to do what you do?
Right. Sure. And I think that it really highly depends on what your passion is at. If you asked me 2-3 years ago, my answer might have been different compared to what I have right now. For example, the reason why I picked accounting back in university was because I grew up in Hong Kong, and it just makes
Right.
perfect sense to pick finance and accounting because if I go back to Hong Kong, that's a perfect place to work on finance stuff. And I figured that supply chain is my passion, where my passion is at. And so that's why I pursue a career in supply chain. And I think going back to your question on how to tell employers that, you have those transferable skills, I think it's really on, understanding what exactly the job market needs right now. For example, I think that the whole reason why I transformed from supply chain to more of a data analytics role, which is my pre-COVID role at Fraser Health, is I feel like it doesn't matter where you go,
Mhm.
data is the new oil. It
Right.
has sans decision, and that's why I just go ahead and pursue that as part of my toolbox. Do I have the answer on where I go in the coming 5 years? Probably not. Like I kind of get a sense, but I don't have a solid answer on that. I think it's just a lot of times you just focus on what you like, listen to your gut feeling, and go from there.
Right. No, and given the fact that we're in this gig economy versus something which is like, okay, we need to like be at a place for like the longest time, only then we grow. I think that has just been changing quite a lot with, especially with like data and like with technology. So if you could just kind of walk us through like a day in a life, like what does that look like for you? And also, what is the team that you work with, and what are the nitty gritties of like Fraser Health? And if you can, talk about that.
Right. So my day to day now it is very different. Some days I would say 3 times a week I work half day in the warehouse with this as well as
Right.
my outfit. And the reason why is with supply chain work that we have been doing, we actually partner with a third party logistics warehouse to help us do it. And we kind of, just think outside the box and build process as it goes, because it's critical time pandemic. There's no way that we can plan it. So it's my day right now. It's really, we don't know how that looks like. Every day is different. Before I jump on the call, I actually ran downstairs to grab a mask order. So it's really hard for me to describe what things happen after COVID started. But before COVID, it was more on, I have a squad of 5, including myself and me as a Scrum Master. I've got a couple of operations engineer, more on the process side and more on the database. And I've got a consultant as well that's going to socialize with customer, and that forms the
Right.
team. So my day-to-day is more on, we run Agile and Scrum. So we have a very solid sprint. Every 2 weeks, we have a sprint. And some days, I just help product managers to build roadmaps. Sometimes I just, have conversation with my members to make sure that we deliver the best that we can. Sometimes I just work on a bit of data visualization. So it's switching around these 3 areas before COVID. And once COVID hit, then, everything changed.
Right, right, right. So, I mean, I know you've talked about like Agile, you've talked about Scrum, and just, for like the audience and myself, like people who are interested in product or technology, where do you even start? Where do you start with Scrum, or like, how do you find out what that means? Are there any certifications? What people should be looking at, like things to learn from, and where do they go?
And to be honest, before I joined Fraser Health, I'd heard about Scrum, but I actually didn't know too much about it. It was until I joined it, I still remember when I first joined last June, I was actually located, my base was actually at Surrey Memorial Hospital. And so we were just running around in different units, understanding the process and all that. Do you need certification to understand what exactly you do? Maybe not, but for me to transition from more of a supply chain background to more of a data analytics tech role, when I was with my previous company, I was actually doing some part-time study as well. So I did a certificate program with BrainStation. I did another online program with eCornell. So it's more around data analytics, statistics. And then for the last 1 year and a bit, I'm thankful that, I've got trained to be a certified Scrum Master and certified Scrum product owner. But that doesn't mean that these are the certifications that you need to get into product management. Yeah, and I think that, this is my 2 cent thought, because I think in healthcare, when we talk about product management or tech, it is a very different way when people interpret it. Like, as you remember, because of our relationship at BizHacks and Best Buy, we learn a lot about Best Buy, how they run technology and stuff. And Pat can probably talk more about that. But I think how healthcare interpret tech is that even if we change from fax to online form, people will think it as technology. So,
Right.
so I think it is very different based on the industry. But for me, it's always like, doesn't matter what industry that you go in, it's always people first, and then process goes second, and then tech comes last.
Mhm. So I'm going to open up the floor for like questions very specific to, let's say, like supply chain or tech or even like the people first solutions, right? Like what does that even entail? Like how do you get into an organization and say, hey, let's figure out what the people or like stakeholders need. So if anybody has any questions regarding that and wants to understand more, please feel free to ask right now.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for sharing your experience. Actually, myself, I have been following Fraser Health for a lot of business analyst roles, which they keep posting on LinkedIn. So, similar to you, I'm currently doing my master's in supply chain management, and I actually plan to move into business analytics and data analytics because I have been studying. Like you said, you did online courses. I've also been taking data science courses, learning SQL, Python. And what my concern is like, even Fraser Health in their postings, they mention like they expect a person to have a 3 to 5 years experience and some previous knowledge as well. So when you pitched yourself them for the role, how was it for you to express them that you are the good fit and you have the skill set that is actually required in the role?
Right. And sorry, I think I missed the very first part when I first joined. But can you repeat which school that are you studying at right now?
I'm at University of Windsor.
Oh, okay. So from the east. Okay, got you.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of alumni actually coming from different parts of Canada.
Yeah.
So I think that for me at that time, I think it goes back to the entire Empower vision that, mentorship and all that. I was very lucky that a couple of years ago, I have had a very good mentor, and he is now still my mentor. He has been working at Fraser for a while, and there was a job posting open, and he asked me to apply for it. And so at the time, I didn't have too much of, what they call the hospital or operations type of experience. I didn't have that tech background too much per se. But I think that, there's definitely some soft skills, as, JB just mentioned in the beginning, that, soft skills, I think is a very important thing, especially, in healthcare. A lot of them actually are not that business or tech focused. They are more on the clinical side. They understand operations, they understand hospital, how to run it, but they actually don't know what they need exactly. Like, they can tell you how to take care of a patient. So,
Right.
that's where we come in and go, okay, now I get what you need. Let me process map it for you. Now I get what you mean. Let me build a dashboard for you. So that's where our contribution comes from. So I wouldn't be too worried about how exactly that you can fit in, or you can apply. I think that, coming more from a private sector background before joining Fraser Health, I realized that there is a huge difference between how government hires people versus how private sector hires people. Government, they focus a lot on the credentials. So now if you have a master's degree, you actually rank a lot higher, allow me to say, compared to any other candidates. I do have several co-workers actually in my department that they got their PhD. They don't have too much of a practical job experience. They got the job right away because they have that PhD experience. So that's why I think that, I would encourage you to try it, apply for it. Depending on what role that you apply for, that also means that they may have different requirements because of a different department. If you see something that's interested, definitely drop me a note, and I can help you look into that as an insider.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for answering my queries. That was really insightful. Thank you.
No worries.
Cool. Does anybody else have a question? Sure, Annika, go ahead.
Hi, thanks again, Jason, for coming in and having and talking to us about this. Yeah, and I agree with you on what you said about how, because I'm actually a clinician first, and yeah, we really don't have any business knowledge or tech knowledge, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing my program right now, just so that I can get that additional knowledge. So I guess my question is, I hear a lot from the other provinces that they're having difficulties getting PPE and acquiring PPE. Based on what I experienced, yeah, sometimes it'll be a day or two short, but it was never something bad. Like, we never really had huge problems. I guess from your perspective, what was a thing that Fraser Health was doing to help with that initial decrease or lack of PPE, and how was it? Because I haven't heard of any bad things so far.
Right. And Anika, can I just ask you before I answer your question? Are you at a site for under Coastal?
Yeah, I'm at UBC Hospital. I'm in Purdy Pavilion. It's a long-term care site right now.
I see. Okay. I think so. Let me clarify myself. I think that I've personally learned a lot for the last 1 year to understand and talk to clinical staff. And I did that in the beginning, actually going to Sir Memorial every morning, just to sit in that meeting and understand more of the operations. And from there, we understand, the business side and, understand what exactly that they need. We build a dashboard. I can give you an example on, we don't know what exactly that we can help, but we went into Sir Memorial Hospital. We realized that we've got 30 nurses that go into the same room just to shout out numbers and go, hey, these are my discharges today, expected, emergency, bring into patients coming to my unit. It was like that in the beginning for 2 hours every day almost. And that's how they do their run, the flow. And so I look at it, and my team and I look at it and go, wow, from my supply chain lens, I look at it as hospital is kind of like a manufacturer. You still have to look at, you have patients coming in, so that's inflow. You have how many people that you can put in the hospital, that's capacity, and then you have, how many patients that you can discharge, that's outflow. So we look at it, and that's why we map it out, and we build a dashboard called Archie, and that's used very widely right now at Fraser Health in all 13 acute sites. So I think that, that clinical lens of looking at things is very important for us to understand. Now, going back to your question on PPE, since this pandemic, no one really expect that. No one can really do a proper demand planning or supply planning. As you probably know, how BC, our province, how they structure all health authorities is that coastal, you guys look at Richmond, Vancouver, North Shore, and Fraser Health, that's, you guys look at Burnaby and Hope. Where supply chain comes from? PHSA. So there's actually a gap between what they exactly store from us for us versus what we actually need. So I can tell you that, one big reason why Fraser Health started this supply chain emergency coordination center is because PHSA, what they're doing right now in terms of the system, they can only support, they mainly can support acute sites and also all the owned and operated sites, like the long-term care sites, as you said. But then we actually got a lot of contracted sites. And for those that may not understand fully about healthcare, we do have different types of facilities. Some are owned by the health authorities, some are contracted. So we sign the contract, we have the contract with the organization, and then they run the site. And so that's what happened with a lot of the Fraser Health sites. PHSA said, well, we actually cannot support those sites because we're talking about hundreds of sites. Right. So what happened is in March, we actually ran out completely on masks. And so you guys probably heard some of that as well. If you want to go to, if at the time you went to Costco, you probably couldn't get anything until, last 2 months, then you see some gloves and everything come in. And so what happened is we actually went out and procured our own masks. We went through the entire cycle, testing and all that. Later on, PHSA caught up with all the supply that we need. So we just got it from them. Now we ran into another issue on GANs 2 months ago, because after August, long weekend, the cases ramped up, right? Like we all saw on the news. And so all of a sudden we've got 11 or 12 outbreak sites, and they're all on droplet precautions. So all the residents need to have GANs. Just for number, for reference, we were talking about like 20,000 GANs a day in terms of demand. So I was like, oh my God, like how is that possible that PHSA can know this in advance and they can store it, right? So there's no way they can store it. And thankfully, like because of my experience at with my previous job and for the manufacturing, a lot of times we store a bit of safety stock. So even if PHSA ran out, I still have 2 weeks to kind of run my little operations. So that's why we kind of mitigate the risk that way. Now, right now there's actually other items that are running low, and you want to keep an eye on is gloves, and it will be another problem for the coming month, because we are actually facing a province-wide shortage. So whatever that you see in Costco probably will run out very soon. So that's my little insider tips. But
that's really good to know. I'm gonna save the gloves.
Yeah. You probably don't see much on the news or anything like that. But that's what happened. And if you search more online on 3M or those suppliers, they actually do say that gloves will be an issue for the coming 2 months, and we already experienced that because we are frontline.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, that's really good information to know. Thanks.
No worries.
That's very interesting, Jason. And what I, like when I think about supply chain, and given the fact that we're living in COVID right now, you talked about risk mitigation. And I just, as somebody who, let's say, for example, is doing these dashboards and who's looking at data all the time, and there is no way like you can project like the exact number, because like the dynamics are changing so fast, right? So what would you say would be, like your way forward to be able to say, okay, like there are these certainties and there are these uncertainties, we can probably, guesstimate, or something which is a tool or a skill that people who are now trying to get into supply chain or data can actually look at?
Good question. And I think that whatever dashboard that we build, we in our department, we call this descriptive analytics, right? So you basically just get whatever information, whatever records of data that you've got, and just show what happened as status quo.
Right.
We actually never predict anything. So I'm lucky that, in my department, we are actually a data department. We call it as a system optimization. So it's a bit of data analytics, product management, and all that combined together. We do have a squad that is in data science. So they're doing more of an advanced analytics. So we actually built, for example, not talking about supply chain, but even for the cases that in Fraser Health region, that team actually build a model to predict the cases, and we are like 95% on track on everything that we built. And we've got like 3 different data scientists just built on that. So we use their knowledge to actually build what that looks like in terms of PPE demand for the coming 2 months. And so when I put orders, one source that I'm looking at is definitely that one. And at the same time, you know, because we order like every week or every 2 weeks. And so, and I built a bit of safety stock as well. So in that sense, you know, we are trying to use everything that we can to mitigate risk. We use the help of data, we build safety stock, we partner with a third-party warehouse, all those type of good things to mitigate risk.
Right. That's interesting insight, and you know, wonderful to kind of hear that these projections are actually at like 95%. And given the fact that, you know, like I hear like a lot of like cross-functional teams and like working with people or like different stakeholders. So what would your advice be for people who are just starting off into this and saying that, okay, we can use whatever our experience to show cross-functional work, or say that, okay, these are the things that we do to kind of get into opportunities, or at least like show that this is our potential, and what is that importance?
Right. I think that, so let me make sure that I understand your question. So you're saying that, you know, for example, for an employer, how do they understand that, you know, you as a potential candidate, whether you're a good fit for your for the role? Okay. I think that I remember my mentor said earlier, you know, when they hire me, he's like, Jason, you know, look at what, especially when I graduate, he's like, Jason, look at you, BCom student at UBC, you've got 700 students all graduate in the same year, all having that BCom degree. Why do I have to hire you but not anyone else? And I was, yeah, you know, you're right. You know, I have that same paper, and so I have to make something different to distinguish myself. And so his analogy was that think of it as a net, and you try to catch a fly. You want to make your net bigger so that you can catch more opportunities. And so I look at it and go, yeah, you know, that's why let's join different things. You know, let's start BizHacks. You know, let's you know, I think the fact that Empower is supporting different things, and you know, you guys got a lot of mentees. I think the mentees would benefit a lot from it. Just that, you know, when an employer look at it, they can say, hey, you know, this guy is different compared to anyone else. So that's what I've been doing. You know, like I think that, you know, in my first job, I was in transportation, shipping. So I'm more in that. I was in container shipping in the beginning. A fun fact about that is that every time when I'm on the highway driving, just seeing the container number, I can actually tell which shipping company that is from. So I was already back in the days. And then moving on to food and manufacturing. And then that time I work in the corporate office, and I was lucky that I've got the opportunities to fly a lot. And so I was like 3 months not in Vancouver with my previous job. So I think that all those helping me to build stories to tell. You know, I think it's very important that, you know, you don't want to be doing the same thing every day. You want to make yourself different, you know, things like that. You know, I look at it and go, wow, you know, yes, COVID definitely impact a lot of different things, but also because of COVID, then, you know, I got a chance to try something else and think outside the box, and, you know, come up with a critical thinking at this critical time. So I think it's more on how do you sell yourself, right? Back to, you know, in the beginning on your questions. I think that's how you sell it to your potential employer.
Yeah, and I definitely see like opportunity is what you make of it and where you find it, right? Like, so on that note, I'm just gonna again open up the floor for other questions. Anybody, any questions for Jason?
Hi, Jason. Thanks a lot for sharing your journey. I personally know little to nothing about healthcare. I was much more interested in the data analytics aspect of your job.
Right.
So I was wondering, what tools do you use for conducting data analytics? And did you have any previous experience prior to this job in data analytics? If not, how was the learning curve for you?
Good. Yeah, don't worry. Sorry, can you, I don't know if I pronounce your name correctly, Daria?
Daria.
area. Okay. Yeah, when you mentioned that you don't know too much about healthcare, to be honest, 1 year ago I didn't know anything either. I think that's okay. I'm still here. Going back to your data analytics question, before I joined FaceApp, I honestly don't have too much experience. What I use right now is Tableau and Power BI mainly, because I think doesn't matter what platform you use. Some people use like SAP or MicroStrategy, you name it, whatever that is. I think it's just a tool, right? Like at the end, it is more on how you're gonna communicate the data to your customer. How do you turn data into a story? I think that's the key thing. A lot of my coworkers, they are great. They know a lot about database. They can build a lot of different algorithms, but they may not be as good as you to communicate with a consultant. So I think, coming in from more like a business background and talking to different stakeholders and, with my previous job, I think that's where my niche and my values can contribute to what I'm doing right now. The way that I look at it is, yes, there's a lot of things that I'm still learning. I'm still learning SQL. I'm not fully proficient at SQL. And I don't think that, if you know about SQL, if you know about Python and R, great, but is that a must? I don't think so, because you've got a lot of developers that are doing it already. But then do you have that many guys that can contribute and talk and turn data into story? Not that much. So I think that, let's focus on that. And I think that also goes into a bit of that product management way too, that how do you actually communicate with a customer? When we say, hey, let's build a dashboard, the engineers may go, okay, let me build you a full-blown dashboard. And then at the end, the customer may come to you and go, that's actually what I want. Like, where's that interaction? But then for us, as more like a business oriented guy, we will go, okay, let me build you a prototype. Is this what you want? Okay, let's do the user testing. Okay, this is good. This is good. Okay, let's move on. And then those are the technical piece. You've got a lot of developers to work with you to build this, right? That's why we need a cross-functional team. So I think that data analytics, to me, data analytics and data science is a very different stream. Analytics is more on visualization and communicating the data. The data science is more on the back end to go, okay, Python, R, let's build a model, those things.
Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. It seems like you're more in the business side of it. I was under the impression that you're also like more in the analytics side for the engineering part. For my job, particularly my team uses the audit command language. And like aside from just conducting data analytics, we also have to build the APIs to connect with the customer's data set to fetch the data in so we can do the data analytics and build the dashboards. So personally, I haven't been exposed to much the aspect of my job yet, but I'll have to do that very soon. That's why I was a little bit afraid and I was just wondering how was that experience for you? But thanks a lot for sharing.
No worries. So do you have to build API by yourself then?
Oh no, API is just a connector. I guess it's just like looking for ways to fetch the data from the customer's database into our analytics tool.
Yeah.
And then conducting the analysis. But then there's a lot of data cleaning. You got to make sure that it's coming in right, and like a lot of those small aspects to it.
Right. I think that, there's a lot of things that personally I can learn as well from data analytics, SQL, Python, all those kind of things. But I think the good thing right now is everything you can pretty much learn everything online. Like I took courses. I'm actually taking courses right now at Udemy and edX. And what I did before I joined Fraser Health is that, so I was doing that BrainStation data analytics certificate, and they had a final project and say, you can pick whatever that you want, but just tell the story. And I'm a crazy aviation fan. At one point, I can remember the airport code back in the days. So I was like, okay, you know what? Like I don't know too much about how that works, but I love the aviation. Let's go ahead and do it. So what I did was every night for 2 weeks, I was going onto YVR website to just get departure data, export it from there, and then just build my little dashboard. So I was actually building my little portfolio at that time, just to show people that, hey, I actually can do it. And one of the directors that actually hired me, he looked at my dashboard and he's like, it's not the best dashboard that he's seen. But then he said that, this guy can talk to the customer that way. Like he has this unique way of communicating. I don't know if it was a good comment or not, but I got it at the end. So I think it's more on that. So I won't be too worried about those things that you don't know or whatnot, because there's a lot of things that you can learn online as well. I can give you one more example on Tableau. There is a huge Tableau community that you can search online. If you
Right.
post a question, someone may have already asked the same question before, and they will just have the complete solution. And this is how we code it this way. And you'll be like, oh, okay, this is how you code it. So you just use
Right.
it. So I won't be too worried about that. I think it's more on, hey, you've got this part of the story, of your life story, you've got the other part of the life story. Let's keep adding on it.
I love that. And I love the fact that, like you basically built something on the side to show that, hey, this is like my project. I'm very passionate about it, and this is how I'm going to share that story. So on that, Jason, if I was to kind of break it down into what are the steps involved, like how would you see like data? Where would you start? I mean, yes, you said that there's business requirements, you speak to stakeholders, you look at the data that you have, and then you go forward, right? Like, so what would that like the whole story look like? So my question again would be, so when you look at like sharing a story or like building a dashboard, what are those steps that you look at, like when you want to convey a story, because
Right.
you don't know what story you're going to convey.
No.
So where do you start and where does it kind of finish with your example that you had?
I think that goes back to that product management way of thinking. You always start from the customer, right? In the beginning, I'll go back to my hospital operation dashboard that we built. When we walk into Surrey Memorial Hospital, we don't know what we want to build from it. I don't think any clinical staff knows what they want either. And then we ask them, what is the problem that they try to solve? And they're like, oh, I need to see in real time where are all my patients from. And we go, okay, so that's like a bird view of what happened at the hospital right now. We can do it. And so that's how we get all the requirements. We understand what they need, and then we build a prototype from there. It's just a paper, sketch it out and say, this box doesn't make sense. This box doesn't make sense. What else do you want? Like, what kind of information do you need? Okay, so this is our first prototype, really. And that's the paper. It's not even a working prototype. And so from there, we check with the customer said, well, yes, go ahead. So we go ahead and build it. And we talk with our engineering team. At that time, we didn't even have the complete database yet, because we still have to partner with another department to get the data. We did that. We partnered with them, and they said, yep, we can give you this, we can give you this. And so we end up just build it slowly, every piece. So I think that product management piece to me is very important, that you always start from the customer, understand what they need, and then you also have to manage the expectation that in Scrum we always deliver incrementally, one thing at a time. Make sure that they are satisfied with whatever that you deliver and they can use it immediately. So I think that's the way that we build it. And go back to my very early comment that when you ask, okay, people, process, and tech, how do you rank it? I think it's always people first, process second, and tech third. Because now you go in, you talk to the people, and then you understand the process. Then that Power BI dashboard is really just a tool. Do you have to do it on Power BI? No, you can do it on Tableau, anything like that.
Right. No, that's amazing to hear. Like, I mean, given the fact that, like, again, agile, Scrum, incremental value add, I think that's very important, because a lot of people look at like a problem and say, oh yeah, you know what? I think I know the solution already. But whereas in like those 5 steps that you're missing out is like, oh, the data might change. The engineering team would say that this is not the way we want to visualize it. So I think that's very important to kind of hold on to. I'm gonna probably open up the floor again for questions, and we'll just probably take another couple of questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead, Annika.
Yeah, so you talk a lot about the story. What would you say are the most important parts? So like in a general, regardless of what the project is or who you're working with, what are the key things that you look for and take into account when you're telling that story?
Tell a story about the data, or tell the story for yourself?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't, is both okay for you to answer, or whatever? I was thinking more for the data, but whatever you think is, whatever you have the best.
I think when we talk about the data itself, there are different things like the data itself, how the interaction of the whole dashboard or the tool, and how people use it, right? So like there is even a user experience piece that kicks in and go, okay, how people use your tool. So for me, it is really, again, go back to the customer, what exactly that they need, and then so you can draft what exactly that you want to convey. In Agile and Scrum, we have user stories. So we go as a clinical manager, I want to have this so that I can make whatever decision. This is my story that I want to tell for that particular box, right? So I think that the way that we construct how we build things, that helps a lot in terms of how we convey our message using data. I going back to what story that I want to tell personally, I think that sometimes you don't have the choice because you don't know what's coming up. But I think that a lot of times I look at it, some of my friends say, oh, Jason, you're a bit crazy in a sense that you switched industries 3 times right now, and are you expecting another one? I don't know. but I think that sometimes you just have to hear your gut feeling that if you think it's the right thing to do, if you're passionate about it, if you want to just learn more, 95% of the time it is the right decision to go for. My first job as a transportation coordinator, they call us dispatcher. It was just very industry specific term. At the time I didn't even know too much about that, but I just went ahead and worked for that role because I think that I need to understand how operations work. So I was in that company for a year. I've got 12 drivers working for me, and I asked them to go whatever port, they go pick up the container, come back, load it, and go again. So I understand about scheduling, transportation, warehousing, in that role. And then I was like, you know what? I look at supply chain and I think that there are 3 types of roles. One is very hands-on, which I did that, and then consulting, and a very number-based role. And then the premium brands opportunity came up, and it's a more like an internal consultant role. I was like, let's give it a try, because I think that that's something that I need to help myself to grow more. I went in, and it's a very good experience. 2 years, flying everywhere to Toronto, Montreal. I was, last 2 years ago this summer, I was flying every other week. And then my mom's like, oh, are you still here next week for dinner? I was like, no. And then there were a couple months that I didn't fly at all. My mom's like, why are you still here? Like, I think stories like that, it's not just about the work story, right? Like, I think that is the life story that, things like that, when you look back and go, and you will laugh, then I know that it is not a decision that I'll regret on. And then move on to healthcare. I wouldn't expect that I'll be in healthcare at all. But this opportunity comes up, and now I think that I made the right choice because I think that with pandemic, I maybe got prepared for it, that now I can contribute using my supply chain background. Who knows in a couple of months from now where I'll go. But I think let's just enjoy the moment. It's part of the journey. I think a lot of people look at jobs and go, that's a lot of things in particular that I have to gain from it. Yes, but then I think it's more on the journey that what teams that you're working with, what are things that you learn from it, and then keep going from there.
Oh, that's really great. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, Jason. Thank you so much. And I think to kind of conclude what I hear, and these are just like ending notes and my 2 cents about things. Like, I hear owning the journey being very important, and also looking at Scrum as your own life and saying, okay, what are the incremental value add that we want, right? Like, what are the things that you're curious about, or what are the things that you think you would want to do for the next couple of years, just kind of focusing on that and going forward. So with that, Jason, again, thank you so much for taking out the time and like sharing your experience and just having this conversation with us. Thanks everyone. Thank you everyone who joined us for this call. And if you ever need any help or any questions very specific to supply chain, tech, business, please feel free to reach out to Jason. I hope that's okay, Jason. Or if you need any help from us, just like let us know.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah. All right. See you everyone. Thanks.
Have a good night.